Tom and Jerry Spinoff 2. Introduction. Hello. This is another spin-off of the Tom and Jerry show I made. This is not related to the first spin-off. This is not a continuation. This is completely separate from the first one I made. This is very violent and disturbing in some scenes. Viewer discretion is advised. I made this for entertainment purposes only. This is very funny. Warning: if you do not like bad words, fighting or violence, then click off this video. This gets very violent with tons of fighting and bad words and BB guns. This is not for people under the age of 16 years old. I do not suggest watching this if you are under the age of 16. This story and video are made for entertainment purposes only. I don't support any violence of this in real life. This was made for entertainment purposes only. Do not attempt anything violent that occurs in this video and story. Do not attempt it anywhere. This can harm you and others or death. This was made for entertainment purposes only. That is all I have to say. Enjoy the story. Plot. It is a peaceful spring afternoon in Utica, New York. On a random street, Thomas Anderson is getting off his school bus. As soon as he enters his house, Grandma Anderson picks up Thomas. She is ticked off. Grandma starts screaming at Thomas. Grandma is ticked off because Thomas has been handing in blank homework assignments for 4 months in every academic class. Grandma tells Thomas he is not getting any dinner. Thomas starts crying. Grandma screams at Thomas because he also failed lunch. Thomas screams like a little girl and punches Grandma. Grandma breathes and she breathes like a god. Thomas manages to escape. He manages to run up to his room. Thomas then makes a huge barricade with his furniture. A few seconds later, Grandma roars upstairs. Grandma opens Thomas's bedroom door. Then she destroys the barricade. Thomas screams as Grandma takes out a massive chore list. A few minutes later, Grandma's smoke mobile drives off. A few seconds later, Thomas flips off Grandma. Grandma gets out of her smoke mobile. She then runs to the house. Grandma screams at Thomas. 30 seconds later, the smoke mobile speeds away. A few minutes later, Thomas goes inside and unrolls the chore list. Thomas then reads out the 300 chores he has to complete. Thomas begins the first chore, which is cleaning the dishes. Thomas walks into the kitchen and he opens the dishwasher. Thomas grabs several dishes and he smashes them on the floor. A few minutes later, Thomas unscrews the lid to a bottle of dishwashing soap. Thomas drowns the dishwasher with 30 gallons of dishwashing soap. Thomas closes the dishwasher and he begins a cycle. A few minutes later, Thomas goes to the bathroom. Thomas does the laundry by blowing up the washer and dryer. Soon Thomas hears a massive crash. Thomas runs upstairs. A few seconds later, Thomas sees bubbles are flying out of the dishwasher. Thomas closes the kitchen door and he forgets about the bubbles. A few minutes later, Thomas smashes the living room TV. A few minutes later, Thomas finishes burning the bed sheets and pillows. He then heads inside and slaps the wall with a crowbar. 20 miles away, Grandma is grocery shopping. Grandma takes out her phone and opens her security camera app. She sees Thomas is destroying her house. A few seconds later, Grandma pushes over her cart overflowing with food. Grandma screams in anger and she runs to her smoke mobile. She then speeds off back to her house. Back in Grandma's house, Thomas is smashing up Grandma's room. After that, Thomas runs to the basement. He takes out TNT and blows up the entire basement. Soon Thomas runs upstairs. A few minutes later, Grandma exits her smoke mobile. She walks inside and sees a massive wasteland of that used to be her house. Grandma finds Thomas with a stick of dynamite. Grandma breathes in. Thomas runs outside as Grandma screams like a howler monkey. A few minutes later, Grandma sees Thomas hijacking the smoke mobile. A few seconds later, Grandma opens a tracker app. A few seconds later, Grandma starts running after the smoke mobile. A little bit later, Thomas picks up his equally black friend called Butch. Butch gets into the smoke mobile. Thomas then speeds off. 10 minutes later, Thomas arrives at a mall. Thomas then spots Grandma. Grandma gets into the smoke mobile and drives to her second home in Mount Airy, Maryland. 3 hours later, Thomas and Butch get thrown into Grandma's dungeon. A few minutes later, they are let out. Butch heads home and Thomas runs up to his bedroom. A few minutes later, Grandma hears a very inappropriate word. Grandma runs upstairs and disciplines Thomas with a frying pan. After that, Grandma walks downstairs. A few minutes later, Grandma lays down on the living room couch. A few minutes later, she falls asleep. A few minutes later, Grandma wakes up when she hears Thomas saying nasty stuff. Grandma walks upstairs while stomping. A few seconds later, Grandma opens a door. Grandma enters Thomas's bedroom. She sees Thomas is cursing at a stranger for no reason. A few seconds later, Grandma beats up Thomas until he is seriously wounded. A few minutes later, Grandma takes Thomas to the hospital. A few days later, Thomas is discharged. Then Grandma drives home in the smoke mobile. 3 hours later, Grandma gets the hospital bill. A few seconds later, Grandma screams in anger when she has to pay $344,221. A few seconds later, Grandma kills Thomas. The end. Conclusion. I hope you enjoyed it. This was fun to make. More stories to come. Bye for now.